I'm in the craft of connecting. I connect people, I connect ideas, and I connect values.
How do you showcase your experience without seeming overqualified?
You just need to kind of pick a lane. And sure, you've done all these other things, but it needs to be really easy based on what I want.
Yes.
So again, take some of my own advice and my own coaching and my own consulting. What do I really want? And what's important to me? And how can I make the biggest difference, with a company? And I realized probably 25 or 30 years ago that two of the most important questions I can ask anyone are, what do you truly want? And number one. And number two, how can I help you in getting it?
Our show today is about what it means to be a man, a husband, a father in midlife. There are so many men I know who have gone through some kind of career transition in midlife. Now, midlife could be today defined as anywhere from 35 to 70, according to Chip Conley, a New York Times bestselling author who is one of the leading experts on what it means to live effectively and purposefully and fulfillingly in midlife. Now, today, I'm thrilled to bring you two friends of mine who are men like me, married with kids. One of the three of us have kids who are a little bit older than the others, but we've all gone through midlife transitions when it comes to our work. And we also know many other men who are going through the same situation. So today is about what it means to go through a midlife professional transition when it comes to your work. And I have two extraordinary people to have this discussion. First, my co-interviewer today is someone I've met recently, but we've become fast friends. We have another friend who's actually similar to us, a married man with kids. And this is my co-interviewer, Pascal Wiscour-Conter. Hi, Pascal.
Hi, very nice to be here.
And he's going to introduce himself in a minute in a little more detail. And I also want to introduce you to a good friend of mine for over a decade, Greg de Koker. Greg and I met each other over a decade ago at a personal development conference that my wife had done the woman's version. And she said, you should try the men's version. It's intense, but it's really interesting in terms of developing your relationships. And Greg stood out to me. There was like 250 men in this big room in New Jersey. And Greg was the natural leader of not just our group from Toronto, but I thought the entire group. He stood out for his charisma, for his ability to just empathize and understand different men effortlessly. And I remember saying, he's got something. He's got that it factor. I want to know that guy. I want to know how I can even become more like him. And we've been friends since, and I've seen his entire trajectory, professionally and personally, over that decade. So welcome.
Thanks, Jamie. Great to be here. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate our friendship.
Thanks. So do I. Pascal, let's start with you briefly. Can you tell us a little bit about, let's stick with your professional background.
It is a very weird one. Never stopping moving, going and trying new things. And I'm someone who had constantly to balance your sense of purpose versus the sense of responsibility when you have a family, career changes, cultural changes, changing continents. And I was supposed to be in finance, and I was lucky enough to rapidly discover it was not my thing, and I became an entrepreneur. And I started in a field I had no clue about at all. And 10 years later, I had become an expert in that field. And then I moved on to the next one I had no clue in. And then it seemed to become kind of a habit. And so I am from Europe. I was in the US for a few years, back in Europe now. And still doing so. I'm 57 now, and I'm still working on the next transition. So I think it has become a habit to do transitions.
That's a great place to start. We're going to dive deeper into that. Greg, what about you? What's a little bit about you in terms of your professional trajectory of how you got to where you are?
Yeah, I think I felt like I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 8. I've always just wanted to create things. I've always been a dreamer. I've always been that guy that's just kind of like, looking up and just thinking about things and, how can I make things better? How can I make people laugh? How can I create more joy? How can I make a difference? And as you know, I've been this personal development, human connection junkie for years. And I realized probably 25 or 30 years ago that two of the most important questions I can ask anyone are, what do you truly want? And number one, and number two, how can I help you in getting it? And I think that's really kind of formed the basis of what I've done in my career, from advertising, marketing, communications, to brand strategy, and then to starting several other companies along the way until, now where I'm now, like, I'm with what's next, what's that next opportunity. And I'll just add, I did pull my dream off the shelf of doing still center retreats. And I call them still center retreats to help people like find their still center, find that stillness and figure out what they want. Most people don't know what they want. I've done that for corporations for so long. I thought it'd be great to do it for people as well. So I've had several kind of those retreats as well, which I love, and kind of helping people to pull their dreams off the shelf and figure out what they want and how to get out of your own way. So, that's been a big part of my journey, is how do I get out of my own way and let things flow.
Well, that's a great place to start. And we're also going to dive deeper into that. Pascal and I'm sure, have some follow-up questions as to what that next step looks like. But before we go to that next step, this is a question I'd like each of us to ponder briefly and answer briefly, which is based on the famous Steve Jobs line that he said at a commencement speech when he wasn't that far removed from our age group and our time. And that was, he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. At our stage in life, what was something, a situation, professionally or personally, in your past that now when you look back, at the time it looked like a disaster, it looked like a failure, a rejection, or outright just sapped you of your identity. And now when you look back, it was a gift or a blessing. And I'll start because it's a big question. It was September 11th, 2001. I was coming back to Canada. I was in New York working for Lorne Michaels' business media empire, Saturday Night Live and Broadway Video Entertainment. And I found out my grandmother was sick. I came back on that day. I helped put my grandmother to rest, and I lost my job. So my personal world was thrown upside down. My grandmother, who I cherished, passed away. I lost my job because of the visa issue. There was a year in Canada working in the US. You have 3.5 years. It was very hard to get a visa after September 11th. And I came home and I felt crushed. My ego felt crushed. My identity of the young guy working in New York in his 20s. Now I had no job. My grandmother had passed away, all within a week. Jumping ahead now, almost a quarter of a century, that's like almost 25 years. What I realized is that if I never lost that job, I never would have, number one, probably met my wife, had our 2 precious kids, and eventually found my way, when I connect the dots looking backward, to becoming an educator, which led me to become a speaker and a facilitator, which feels much more aligned and much more in sync with who I really am. So what was the worst moment, losing my job in my mid-20s, became the blessing and the gift at 50.
That is very profound.
Pascal, what about you?
Well, and I promise I didn't copy, but it also is connected with New York. There's several basically that I could mention, but I want to talk about this one because it is still resonating, and I feel I'm still leaving the echoes of what happened also back in 2020. So yes, I was living in New York, the happy life there. I mean, I was happy. I really loved what I was doing. I had like 3 different activities. Being an entrepreneur, having known also ups and downs before, I thought 3 activities, that's great. You're safe. You're not relying on one. It's going to be really good. And I loved what I did. And I was exposed to stuff in real estate and then storytelling and then advising companies in strategy and communication. And we really literally started to look into like finding a little nice home somewhere upstate New York. And then was this little formality that we just needed to get the new visa renewed. And so we started the whole process. And then just before Christmas, we got a note that, okay, now you have to go back to Luxembourg, my home country, to do the process there. You have to start from scratch and do everything there. So fine, we just got a backpack thinking this is a 3-week thing. We just go back there. I even left my computer in New York. And our daughter came with us because she was under our visa, but our son, who was already 20 back then, stayed. He was studying in Savannah, Georgia. So he stayed there. And we said, like, we'll see you for your birthday in April. And we go back to Luxembourg and then 3 weeks and then, some extra time. And then you have to do the application and it works. But then there's another kind of thing that needs to be reassessed. And all of a sudden the lockdown comes. And literally that plane we were supposed to go back to New York is the first one that would not fly. So we literally were about to go to Amsterdam, get our flight, and then we just knew, no, useless. We don't do that. And then it's for many months that you do not know if you go back or not. And I can see my 3 activities. I was safe, remember? And I see them melting one after the other because they were depending on what was going on in New York, and nothing was going on in New York anymore. So I can see everything dying slowly in front of me professionally. Then I see part of my family with me, like, what are we going to do here? Our daughter, her future was in New York. She was already looking for college and everything got destroyed, and she got really depressed, hugely depressed. And our son was stuck in the US. We couldn't go there. He couldn't come. I had this dream. I was like, talking of kids, there's 2 things that made me extremely emotional back then going to the US, which is a place that I just love, was to see my kids on the yellow bus. And it made me literally like tear up. And the other one was like, one day I would see my kids graduate and I would be there and I would see them throw these hats. In Europe, we have this image of throwing the hats in the air. And I had to watch my son on a TV screen from home while he was in Savannah, Georgia. We didn't see him for 2 years. And at the same time here, everything was falling apart. And I was like, why does this happen? I was so upset because I really thought I would never go back to Luxembourg anymore. We didn't even teach the language to our kids. So they don't even speak the language of Luxembourg because we thought never ever. And yes, now 5 years almost forwards, still working on it. It still has implications, but I found a way, or the way showed up from itself, that I'm doing the things I love now that I never imagined I would be doing in that fashion. And it's opening doors that I never expected would be opening, that I know now had I stayed in New York, I probably would have had fun doing things, but I would never have discovered something that now feels so profoundly connected to who I really am. And it's just the next chapter of the story, because I am already getting ready to move again.
Well, thanks for sharing. That is inspiring. And it's interesting how both of our connecting the dots, looking backward, where we both pointed to that place was New York.
Yes. And I used actually that quote very often with my family. And there's another one I'm using jokingly, is that the famous movie 7 Years in Tibet. And I said to my family, we're 7 years in Luxembourg. So 2 more years to go.
That's right.
Including the transformation that you have in the movie that Brad Pitt goes through.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. And Greg, what about you? When you look and you connect the dots backwards, professionally or personally, what's something that looked profoundly bad, rejection, failure, disappointment, that when you look back now in your life, you realize that was meant to be because it's helped make you who you are today?
That's a big question and a great question. So a few things popped into my head, and I'll focus on one of them because I think the other two might come out in our conversation. But none of them involved New York. So is that okay? You know, I didn't know I was supposed to get it pre-approved to talk about a non-New York story. So anyway, I'll fire ahead. So mine was when I had been doing marketing and advertising and communications for quite a few years, and I was starting to get a little bit, bored of it. And I really wanted to make a bigger difference with corporations. And I wasn't sure how to kind of bridge that gap at that point. I had built up a team. There were 6 of us. So, small team, but handpicked everyone. One of my team members was my brother, my youngest brother. So, which was really special to be able to work, with him and two other people that have become two of my best friends, lifelong friends since then. And I had an opportunity to focus just on brand strategy. I was really getting tired of the execution of the campaigns, and I really wanted to just focus on brand strategy. An opportunity with a man, a brand expert called Ted Matthews. And during that whole time, I had another opportunity to merge our small agency with another larger agency. So I was like, do I build the agency? There's opportunity to scale it. Is that the kind of difference that I want to make? Probably be able to make a lot more money potentially, right? And that on that path, brand strategy, not sure, right? It's still, there are a lot of unknowns, and I decided to focus on brand strategy. I felt for me that was a real opportunity to develop that expertise even more so I can make a bigger difference. And it was hard. I was leaving a team behind. I had to kind of say goodbye to the team, and then they kind of went and did their own thing. So it was, that was challenging. And I wasn't sure, if I made the right move, initially. I just had to kind of trust my gut. It felt good inside, and trust my instincts. The name of the company, ironically, was Instinct. So there was another like, oh, okay, this is interesting. All coming together. Out of that relationship and that opportunity, we co-authored a book called Brand It Ain't the Logo. It's What People Think of You. And it really, I got goosebumps thinking about it. It really defined our process. It defined our unique value proposition. It laid the path. It created the path for me to, make the massive difference that I did with other companies. Which is really just taking them through. Like, if a brand is what people think of you, let's go find out what people think of you. Let's talk to your stakeholders. Let's get to the heart of the matter by getting to the heart of the people. And it really was a very special journey for me that I've continued on. And I've used that thinking and developing, like, what do people think of you now? And what do you want people to think of you? Kind of current perceptions, desired perceptions, to help create brand strategies for my own companies. So it's really impacted even when I'm sharing with friends, when I'm coaching friends, I'm coaching clients. It's just such a big part of, of who I am, and that thinking and that process and the value that I've created has continued. So it's made a massive difference in my life, and it's helped me to kind of make a massive difference in organizations' life, and really to create more joy in the workplace. Like, I mean, that's my, as you know, that's my thing. I want to help create brands that employees and stakeholders love. And we'll talk more about that potentially later. But yeah, so it's been, I was unsure, and then trusted my gut, trusted my instinct, went with instinct, and it worked out really well. And that was a while ago. I've had, a few things since then. So,
did that process change whoever you felt you were?
It helped me get connected with my purpose, actually. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, it really, it helped kind of clarify it and crystallize it. And through all the personal development work I was doing and all of the corporate coaching and consulting I was doing, it all came together. And I realized, like, my purpose is to create more joy in the world by instilling a deeper sense of purpose and passion and playfulness in people and organizations. So that is who I am, and that is what I do personally and professionally. So yeah, thanks for asking that.
And just one more note on Greg's story is he's being humble, but that book became a Globe and Mail bestseller, which means the Globe and Mail is Canada's #1 business newspaper, and it resonated with a lot of people. So it really was his passion and a purpose and how and what he was sharing in that book, and it really impacted a lot of other people too. So that's a little detail.
That's cool. Very cool.
So I'd like to go back to Greg's journey, but before we do that, I'd like to do a speed round, which means I'm going to pull up a series of global trending parts or ideas from Harvard Business Review and other reputable business publications about what middle-aged people are going through when it comes to their jobs, and that balancing act between, do I move in the direction of an entrepreneur, or do I really work to ground myself in something that's more responsible, working for a bigger company, to see what the three of us think. And I'm also going to ask at this point for Pascal to jump in and be my co-interviewer, to interrupt and to take this in any direction you think that it could go.
Let's go.
The first point is, how do you showcase your experience without seeming overqualified? So a little bit of background on that. Do you tailor your resume to highlight relevant skills from the past 10 to 15 years and position yourself as a solution to a company's problems rather than appearing as an overqualified candidate? That's what Harvard Business School said is a real challenge about how to balance that. How do you showcase your experience without seeming overqualified? Any ideas?
It is one of the things I happen to do, teaching and also working with customers. And I'm a big believer that you need what I call an alignment between your purpose and the vision, for instance, of an organization. And the vision and the mission and the value proposition, the same thing inside of an organization. And if you have that, then you will probably introduce yourself in a different way. It's not going to be anymore a feeling of bragging what you do, what you know, what you've experienced, but it's got to be much more focused. As Greg said, how can you help people? How can you make them feel happy in his particular case? And you're going to just give a number of elements to showcase that. So through that grapevine, if I may say so, you're going to let transpire your knowledge and how you can help people, but you're not bragging. And at the same time, you're very reassuring, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of question the term overqualified, what do you mean by that? Is it if you're applying for a junior position and, an entry level position and in your 50s, I mean, you're probably overqualified, again, depending on the job. But I think it comes down again to really getting clear about what you want and really focusing on that. And I know in Canada, especially, there's the tall poppy syndrome. We don't like to kind of, stand out, too much. We want to kind of blend in a little bit. And I think a resume is really an awesome time to stand out. I mean, you're hoping to get that opportunity, find that fit, ideally what seems to be a good fit, and be authentic in your expression of your experience as well. Because I don't think it's good for you or good for the potential employer to, or to over exaggerate or to put in things that really aren't true, right? Because that's not going to help anyone out. So I think it's doing your best to find that fit. And in doing so, share what's going on and be confident in it, and it not arrogant, but confident, in your approach and who you are. I mean, I think we all have everything we need to be, successful in life, and just embracing that and being confident that you will find that. So be authentic in your expression of it. And yeah, I try not to, and again, this is recent for me as well. Being an entrepreneur my whole life. I mean, I've recently done my resume the first time in decades. And so I've been going through this. And for me, I'm just kind of like, I'm putting it out there. Yeah, I think humility, there's definitely humility in there. I do have co-author of a best-selling book. So in my resume, I say best-selling book for 5 years, but in the interview, it didn't seem like it really mattered at the beginning when we were chatting. But yeah, I think I just tell people to go for it. Like, put it all in there, be clear about what you want, bring it back to what you want, and tailor your resume honestly and authentically to what you want, so that you increase your chances of getting in front of them, and then they get to experience who you are. You get to experience who they are. And from there, you can decide if it's a good fit.
Yeah, I think that word fit. And part of that fit is just one sentence I would add to what you both said is, I would want to focus on, and this is when I'm asked to present myself for being a facilitator or a trainer for the companies that I work for, is I'm thinking, how do I solve their problem? How do I focus on providing outcomes and a process to reach those outcomes, because ultimately they want their problem solved. So get them less focused on whether I'm qualified or not, and more, am I the right person to help solve that problem?
I'm assuming it's also really hard when you've been an entrepreneur and all of a sudden you have to jump onto the other side of the fence. And so I had to do the same thing back in Luxembourg, and it really felt very awkward. And I had a sense of, how could I say, unfairness or injustice, because you knew who you were, you tried to convey it, and all of a sudden, all these things that you've learned, you have to push them into a small box so that it can fit into an HR person or whoever you're talking to. And you just feel you will never be able to expose all those things. And at the same time, if you don't, it may cost you the opportunity to even get to the next step. Did you have that kind of an experience when you prepared your resume?
Yeah, I did. It wasn't an easy process for sure, right? Because again, it's like, what have I done? What have I achieved? It's like my whole self-worth in a few pages almost. And I really had to take a step back and just think about the difference, that I've made and the connections that I've made, the impact that I've made, and to really honor that, right? And to really treasure it. So it gave me an opportunity to go back quite a few years and to go down that path. And, after I created my first resume, I sent it to a couple of headhunters because I wanted to get their feedback, see if they had someone that they knew that might be a good fit for me to talk to, contract, employment, whatever. And the feedback I got was, Greg, you're all over the place. And, I'm like a brand guy. This is my personal brand. I feel like I'm great at marketing, great at, distilling the essence. And so I'm like, I've nailed it. I've got my it's a little different, right? So I want to stand out. So I've got my headline like brand and culture transformation coach. Or no, actually at that point it was creating raving fans from the inside out. Really it was like, and I thought, okay, well, that's different for LinkedIn. If someone saw that in a resume and saw that in a profile, that's a bit different, right? So I'm hoping I'm going to stand out in a good way. And they're like, well, Greg, is it like you have all these things? It's like, author, speaker, brand, strategic planning, culture transformation. And they'd go on this list. It's like, you just don't seem focused. And I was like, my career has encompassed that, but how do I express it in a way where someone would see it and think, oh, wow, this guy might be great for our company? And I was missing that. He's like, you're making everyone else do the work for you. We're trying to find out, okay, well, we're looking for a brand strategist, but, he's done brand strategy, but he's also done culture, and he's also started an e-commerce company, and he also does retreats, and he's also done leadership coaching. And so they're like, you just need to kind of pick a lane. And sure, you've done all these other things, but it needs to be really easy based on what I want.
Yes.
So again, taking some of my own advice and my own coaching and my own consulting, what do I really want and what's important to me, and how could I make the biggest difference, with a company?
In the end, you end up having 3 or 4 different versions of your same resume, depending who you're talking to. Because people like us three are a nightmare for HR people, because they need to put someone in a box because they need to sell it. And it's literally, like I said, it's like a big plant that blossomed, that is beautiful. And they just need to bring it back into a box so that they can hand it over to someone who then needs to do something with it. So it's impossible to bring across all the things learned.
And it's tough because you want to break out of the box. It's like, what are those, where are the boundaries? How do we, and I call it like, how do I create some freedom within boundaries? How do I create some kind of boundaries within the resume or within the LinkedIn profile that helps to get my point across? And again, make it easy for people to connect with me and to see something that may be a good fit for them as I'm looking to connect, with my network and with potential employers and to see if it's a good fit. So it's like, how can it help me to help you? It's like, it's Jerry Maguire.
Do you think that one of the explanations could be that if you compare our profiles with people that have had more of a traditional career, that usually one hires the profile, that means what the person have done and know well, versus here we hire a personality?
I mean, they always say hire for personality and train for skill to a certain point, depending on the job, right? Not if you're looking to become a surgeon, you need a little bit more training. But I think in a lot of cases, you want that base expertise, but a lot of things you can develop and learn if you have that kind of base. So I was struggling. It's like, how do I put myself in a box? I mean, how do I get my personality across? And that's why I thought creating raving fans, might have that kind of positive, fun, different entrepreneurial energy. Anyway, I don't have that now. I've since, and not that I've tried to put myself in a box, but I've just tried to make it easier for me and make it easier for other potential employers, people looking to hire on contract, but injecting some of my personality. And like, it's okay to say, I want to help companies, like help create brands that employees and customers love. right? The more your employees love it, the more your customers love it. So it's okay to use love, right? Even that, second guessing, should I come up with a different word? Is there a better way to say it? So, I mean, I'm trying to take my own advice and at the same time, fit within that and ultimately get my personality across. Because I want to go to, if I, and working for that dream company, that dream team, finding that, that great fit, I want to be able to make a difference, and I want to be able to do it. I want to be me. I want to be, I want to be fun. I want to be quick. I want to be witty. I want to be insightful. I want to be empathetic. I want to be all those things. Great listener, authentic, and not just do my tasks, right? How can I be more me? How can I help to give other people, not that I'm giving them permission to be themselves, they have to give that to themselves, but how can I create a space where that is easier to do in corporations? So anyway, I think I went beyond your question, but
Greg, before we move on, because there's something there I wanted to build on, putting you on the spot after going through that process, and you're still going through that process now of refining and defining how you're putting yourself out there with a resume, a CV, into the corporate world from an entrepreneur. What did you land on ultimately? With which path did you land on now, or which paths, if you could sum it up in a few sentences as to what you want, if you're putting out into the world, into the corporate world, if someone's listening to this who's running a company, a mid to large size company, what do you want them to know about you to dig deeper in as to how you can help them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I call myself a brand and culture transformation expert. So, and I really want to find a place where I can come in and help to create, co-create, recreate a brand that the employees are going to love or love more, right? And so that because the more the employees love it, like I said, the more the customers are going to love it. So how can I help them leverage their brand? One of their biggest competitive advantages to create a uniquely remarkable brand, a brand so great that people remark about it, they talk about it, they rave about it, they become fans. I want to help to build a brands from the inside out, right? So that's really my focus, and culture is a big part of it. I look at it as two sides of the same coin. And in creating that uniquely, highly differentiated brand, coaching people on how do we use that to drive every decision, curate every experience, discover and achieve every single goal, that we do, including developing our culture, high performing, high functioning culture, which I think is, again, another one of the biggest competitive advantages. And that's beyond 30 seconds. I'll tighten after the next interview.
Well, I started this 30 minutes ago, believe it or not, talking about how when I met you, you transformed the culture, not of your company or mine, but we were part of this really established personal development conference, but your energy, your intangibles impacted everybody around you. So if culture is sometimes hard to define, the stories that people tell yourselves at dinner, or it's how the decisions are made within a company, there's many ways you could define culture. This is a testimonial to you, is that I can see you going into companies and having a tangible impact on their culture with your presence alone, within the limitations that you're given to impact people as a coach, as a branding expert, or finding a specific task within the company that helps them reach where they want to go. So I just, from a personal standpoint, knowing you, that actually is alignment with what I've seen you do when you show up and how you show up.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that.
I wanted to move on to something which is interesting, because Greg and I are both in the Toronto area, and Pascal, you're in Luxembourg, but you're truly global in your experiences and where you've lived, and the different jobs you've had as well over the years. Networking in our current time. Now, networking in the times we are in now, which is the digital age, you could call it, for lack of a better term, but also networking at middle age, when you might have had a certain circle of friends, certain circle of people who you know. Now, when you're going through some type of career transformation, how does that look in terms of putting yourself out there? One thing I'm going to add, because it's grounded in what we're doing, before I want to hear from both of you, how do you network in the age we're in now, at the time in life we are in, is one of the reasons that I started this podcast is for networking, not networking in the old way of putting it, but it's what we're doing here. I actually thought that, Greg, you and I have been talking. I thought, well, this would be a great way to help you get out there at this moment. It's also a way for a new friend, Pascal, to connect with you, and also to connect the two of you, who I said to both of you have a similar energy, have a lot in common. And so in a way, it's having a formalized, structured conversation, which everyone hopefully benefits when we put this out in the world with all of our networks. And it's also a way to connect the people on the call. My call last week was I brought together Erica M., who is a legendary, iconic media personality in Canada, a friend of mine. And I asked her to co-host, like Pascal is co-hosting with me. And we interviewed Jen Donahue, who is a really fascinating, innovative corporate wellness entrepreneur who I've worked with. So I wanted to connect the two of them. And I also wanted to help Jennifer get her mission out there, because I really believe in what she's doing. So I have, in middle age, seen, well, how can I get out there? What's in my control? And one of the things was, let me start a podcast to reach more people and connect with new people, new friends, new colleagues, and bring these people together in this format and get them out.
If I may just add, Jamie, you're really good at that, because we've never met with Greg, but I feel an energy, and I need to come to Toronto. I need to come and meet you guys. But really, I can feel it. I mean, I really, it feels like we've known before, and it's the first time we're interacting, and I look forward to meeting in person soon.
I agree. As soon as Pascal popped onto the show, I mean, just his smile and his energy, I was like, yeah, no, Jamie's nailed this.
He's good.
He's good as well. So, huge fan already. I'm a raving fan already.
So networking, I feel that both of you are the perfect people to ask. Just again, Pascal, your energy, Greg, like you, the way that you kind of draw people to you like a moth to a flame, friends and people around you. So the two of you, I'd love to hear, how do we do it for ourselves, and what value can we add in this conversation about how do you network today in a digitized hybrid world?
I think that networking is important because, again, it's putting yourself out there. It's sharing your story. I think also oftentimes people think of networking as one-sided. Not always, but sometimes it's kind of like that. What can you do for me? And I think if we can, look at networking as an opportunity to truly connect with people and get to know them and to be of service to them, I think is really special. So I've been setting up, like meetings with people in my network, and, whether it was like past clients, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues, people I've done courses with, and really connecting with them, and I'll be honest. I mean, I did have the first few meetings were more, I realized I was making it more about me. Like I literally was just kind of like, hey, I'm kind of looking for that next opportunity, whether it's, finding a job. I've been doing my own thing. Like I'm in my dining room right now. I'm a very social guy. I just thought I didn't work for a company and, since I was in my 20s, so a few decades. Right. And so it's been a long time. And I thought I'd like to experience that. I'd like to really contribute to one company. I've been contributing to so many, as clients, and just to focus on one, I thought would be really special. So I went from kind of just sharing my story and making it a little bit more one-sided. It kind of like, what can you do for me? That's not my intent in the connection, but I realized after that it was one-sided. So, now, which is more my style, it's just really connecting, getting caught up, and sharing where I'm at and hearing where they're at. And also really listening to where they're at as well, and seeing if there's something that I can do that might help them, whether it's connecting with someone, whether it's, I'm giving them feedback on their brand, personal brand, corporate brand, or whatever, but how can I be of service to them? And I look at it as, I heard this from a coach once, is be interested versus interesting. I'm interested in them, and I'm not just focused on me being interesting. I'm so fascinating. I'm serial entrepreneur and I've co-authored a book, and I don't bring that energy to the table. It's like really asking a lot of questions and really listening. I think there's so much to be gained. I'm sure we've all had conversations where you feel like all you've done is listen, and they come back and like, oh my God, this is the best conversation I've ever had. Because I held space for them to say what they needed to say. And I'm sure I asked questions along, but really hearing them. I mean, we all want to feel like we belong. right? I think that's that we all want to feel like we all want to, feel seen, heard, and valued. And if you can help to create a space for people and doing that, I think everything just flows easier. So I think it's looking at connecting versus networking. I think connecting is a better word. Networking can sometimes have and there's nothing wrong with networking, and not to micromanage, the word itself, but looking at it as truly connecting. Where are those events that I can go out? Because I think part of it is, how can I continue to put myself out there? How can I get out of my comfortable dining room space and just go and meet people and share? And how can I be of service and, laugh and connect and hear what they have to say and hear where they're at. So I think it's just being intentional in that.
And you do that. I remember there's been conversations where we've spoken over the years where I'm sure I've done 89% of the talking, and then our time was up and it just flew by, and I thought, oh my God, I feel so guilty. And you're like, no, it's good to hear. But I felt good, but I felt I was more energized at the end of the conversation than I was at the beginning. And I thought that's that living, walking your talk. You were being interested, genuinely interested in allowing me space to share something I was happy about which is a real gift today, because not everybody has that frame when you're speaking with them. And I thought, that is high EQ. That is a people's person in every sense of the word. So you definitely walk your talk.
Thanks, Jamie. I mean, our relationship is anything but one-sided, and it's been amazing over the years. So, and again, when you create a space where people are sharing something that's really important to them, that's such a huge gift to me, to be able, they feel comfortable. Like, if I can create a space where they feel comfortable sharing that, and that's what I've kind of brought to corporations over the years is really creating that safe place where people kind of trust you and they can say, hey, this is what's going well with the company, and this is what isn't going so well, and here's what needs improvement. So again, it's getting to the heart of the matter, about getting to the heart of the people. So, and you can do that one-on-one. That's not just consulting and coaching, that's relationships. I think business comes down to people and relationships. Relationships are built on conversations and trust. So if you can create a space where the conversations flow easily, and you're being of service to someone, I think that's a really special place. I feel very grateful when I'm in that space. So
I can only concur to everything that was said. Yes. Before that, I'm going to add another dimension that we also have now is age. And I think twofold of it. First, when you're young, you are in this race for recognition. So you need to showcase who you are. You probably need to list all the things that you already know, because there's less. And so there's this pressure to come across to somehow hook people. But the more you do, the less you're effective doing it. And then with age, I guess, comes some kind of an experience where you understand that there's another way that you can do it, so that you basically, the more you let go, the better it probably works. But then also, like, when you have to go back into networking, like perhaps the case for you, or when I came back to Luxembourg, all of a sudden I have to rediscover people you haven't seen for 20 years. It's awkward as well, because you tend to want to feel stupid, because you think, I'm old now and these people are all young and who am I, and so on. And you just want to forget that. So I'm fortunate because so we have kids 21 and 25, but my wife, so 2 kids, my wife says that she has basically 3 kids. And I answer, as long as I'm like that, be happy. If one day I change, that's when you should start to worry. But it gives me this power to just oversee that. And as I happen to work with startups, so you meet very young entrepreneurs, I'm teaching at the Luxembourg School of Business, so same thing there. And you just do not allow that to become either a burden or a limit. And it takes a bit of time, but all of a sudden, this younger generation then just like they switch from like looking at this older person with gray hair to, well, he's really cool. And then that bridge is built. And the other 2 aspects you mentioned, yes, so it's really about stopping to talk about yourself and having an interest for others and give them that safe space and be of service. I think that is really important. That's the second aspect. That today when I go into networking, I've just made the decision some time ago that I'm never anymore entering into a conversation hoping to get something. I'm entering to how can be I of service, helping, not even thinking of whatever I could get in return. Just giving, and then it's out there, and universe is well done. So I'm sure it's coming along even when you do not expect it, and probably you should not expect it. but you just, because, and then obviously imagine everyone would be doing the same thing. That what a wonderful world that would be if everything was giving to the others. But I think that at some stage you feel comfortable enough, strong enough, confident enough to just focus on people. And the last thing I want to say is that I had literally to unlearn, because when you network, people will ask you where you work or what you do. And it took me some time, and I converted that into talking why I do the things. So now when people ask me, I'm saying, I'm in the craft of connecting. I connect people, I connect ideas, and I connect values. And usually then they're like, oh, and then from there you can play. But it's literally not telling them anymore the things that serves to put you in a box, as we were saying, for the resume, but that do show how you blossomed, and it puts people then into also a more comfortable relationship exchanging with you. So they're going to open up also more, in my experience.
What I'm hearing is, don't tell me what you do, tell me why you love what you do. And that distinction, first of all, it's a differentiator, because most people go right to what they do. And then it becomes, like you said, like Greg was saying, a version of it is be impressive, instead of impress upon you that I'm here to really understand you. And I think it's also tapping into, when you get people going beneath the surface of what their work is, it really goes into a place of vulnerability if they're open to it. And it gets them a part of their brain thinking and reflecting in a way that they're not used to, which makes you memorable because you get them to that place.
And it's actually very hard to focus on that aspect of sharing your purpose and focusing on why you do the things. Neuroscience explains that basically, because if I ask you guys, like, why do you love your kids and your wife? You can't answer that question, because why is something that touches upon emotions. Emotions happens in our not in our neocortex, it happens in our limbic system. So we do not control it consciously. That's why we fall back all the time on what we do and how we do it. And professionally, I'm helping people to even like dig and find their purpose. And it very often, almost every time, they will fall back into what and how. And then you have to literally use some strategies to bring them to talk about things in a different way, because otherwise they're stuck in this loop. And it's just our brain is wired that way.
And I think a lot of it comes down to mindset too, right? I mean, where are you? You know, how are you thinking? How are you being? You know, like how we're being, like everything kind of stems from that, right? So if you're being angry, all you're doing is going to be angry. If you're being loving, all of your doing is going to come from that, and it's going to be loving. So if you're being open, if you're being curious, so I think there's a big part of it, and it's really paying attention to how you're being. And I do love the what, how, why, and Simon Sinek, talked about it beautifully. Like every company, every person talks about what they do. Most talk about how they do it. Very few talk about why they do it. And we choose companies for the why, to work for, to buy from, to collaborate with. So I think it is a beautiful.
I just had an experience now with my first year bachelors. And I did the work with them, like finding your why. And the week after, there was a career fair. So the homework they had was we did a workshop where I helped them to find a beginning of their why, their purpose. And I said, now you're going to look up the companies that are going to be at the career fair, look up their vision statement, their mission statement, and try to see where there's an alignment between what you found and what you can read, what they are broadcasting. It was very interesting to see how, and they're first year bachelors, so really first year, they're still like 18, 19. So very unexperienced, but still they could tell you afterwards, this company versus that company, they could feel something. And that's valuable, because and I told them, all I'm wishing you is to find a job where you're going to be aligned.
I agree. I think it's great for them and great for the company, and find that culture that is a really good fit. And I think here's something else too, is like, I don't usually ask people what they do, because most people statistically don't love what they do. So all of a sudden we're coming right up against like, okay, I've just engaged them in a conversation that they probably don't want to talk about. So why not have a different conversation and ask a different question and connect in a different way? Some of the best conversations I've had, have gone on for however long they've gone on. At the end of it, it's like, I don't even know what you do. And it's like, and maybe it doesn't even matter. Depending, again, networking is a little bit different if you're there kind of, to connect with people and to give back and to be of service. But again, it depends on your mindset. It depends on your intention and what you're going in, to do. But I do love that. Yeah. Because again, it's a typical question because, you're meeting people. What are you doing here? How did you get here? How do you know so-and-so? What do you do for a living? And I think it's okay to let people tell you and share that, in their own way, in their own time, if they want to. Yeah.
Jamie, would you allow me to add something? Because I know time's flying, but it connects to how we started the conversation. Given that
Yes.
I have kids that are a bit older, I've gone through something that I wanted to share also with Greg about this decision-making, like literally your career versus your family responsibility. And so I made the move 2 times. So the first time we moved from Luxembourg to Monaco, the kids grew up in Monaco, south of France. And then we moved to the US and they were 8 and 12. And they were really not very happy about the move. And I remember having a conversation with them, like negotiating really to go to the US. And then they said, because back then there was like, what was it like? There was a movie and there was like a high school academy, something with music. And they were like, yeah, but then we want to go to a high school if we go to the US. And deal, you're going to get that. So I kept my promise. We moved over. What I'm saying is that it was tough on them then. Our daughter barely spoke English, a few words. Our son, okay. But then, yes, it was very hard, at least 1 year, if not more. And I felt really bad because I thought, what did I do? I not only took them away from an environment they knew well, their friends, perhaps they had already like in mind what they wanted to do. And all of a sudden then we throw them there. And it was hard. And you could see that it was hard on them. And now that they're grown-ups, when we talk about that, they actually tell me it was hard, but we're grateful that you did it because we learned to live in another continent. We have become multicultural. If you speak to our kids, they're Americans in how they are. But at the same time, they're also Europeans. So it gave them an edge that they would not have had otherwise. So for years, I really felt culprit. I really felt very bad about it, that I thought I had harmed my kids. And basically, today they're thanking me for it because it has given them something extra. So I wanted to share that whenever you're going to have to make such a decision, you can only connect the dots backwards.
I love that. I thought of a few things actually, because you looked at, the decision you made as a mistake, like it had a negative impact on you.
As an egoistic mistake. I thought I had been egoistic.
Oh yeah, right.
Selfish.
Because it was all about you and it wasn't about the family, and you're being selfish. And I think, we need to give ourselves permission to look at reframing mistakes. And I've listened to a few celebrities, and for some reason there have been a lot of celebrities saying, you don't learn a thing from success. By the time you're successful, you've done all the learning, right? And maybe let's not look at it as mistakes. Like, how do we learn? We're learning because we're taking action, which is key. Not just insights and things that, oh, that sounds like a good idea, or, okay, got it. You had a little nudge and someone, put an idea in your head or suggested something, but it's like taking action on that and taking inspired action. And I think it doesn't always work out, but then again, we wouldn't know unless we took action. So I think it's important to take action. It's important to reframe our mistakes into lessons, stepping stones, building blocks. Like, we are meaning-making machines. Like, everything is meaningless until we attach meaning to it. So if we're going to make something mean something, why not make it mean something empowering and positive and something that's going to build us up and bring us up? And in doing so, it's a lot easier to bring, other people up around us, like our family. And the other thing, just 2 other real quick points. I've read, multiple places that the biggest gift you can give your kids is your own happiness. I think we're doing such a huge favor to our kids by sacrifice. And, sure, I'm not saying don't make sacrifices. I'm saying, but it's easier. And it comes back to the age-old analogy of the oxygen mask philosophy. We've heard it 1,000 times, right? The better we take care of ourselves, the better we can take care of our family, our clients, our friends, our communities, our neighbors, whatever that looks like. And as far as the responsibility thing, that brought up for me, there's a difference between a distinction between being responsible to and being responsible for. And I think we want to be responsible to our clients. We want to be responsible to our family. But we can't be responsible for the way that they internalize stuff, for the way they interpret it, for their results. We can give them all the advice in the world, all the coaching, all the consulting. But we can't be responsible for the results. Really, that comes down to them taking action, unless they're under 18. When our kids are under 18, we are responsible to them and for them. Once they become adults, and it is a different story. But I like that distinction, because for me, that was a big, like, it kind of took, it just gave me a different perspective. It allowed me to give myself a little deeper breath and just to still do the best that I can, but not get so attached to,
It's so true. You make me realize I forgot to give you the other side of the coin of this story, is that, yes, I went for a number of crazy things that I wanted to do, and I carried my family with me. But then I always made the choice that I would dedicate time to my family. We had almost always dinner together, no TV, no phone. We are talking together. Weekends also. So yes, I was very busy building an organization, but my priority remained always the family and the kids. And I think that hadn't I made that choice, two things would have happened. I would have had more success professionally, that I'm absolutely certain. But I have zero regrets, because when I look at my kids and I can tell that we are best friends today, and as a family, we're just so united, that's the best thing ever.
One quick thing you made me think of on that is I also I analyze, overanalyze. I spend a lot of time in my head. I'm trying to spend more time in my body, because our body's incapable of lying, right? Or we can rationalize anything any way we want in our head, but our body, our body reacts honestly. And that's when people say, trust your gut, really, it's important. And, you brought up as far as making those decisions for your family and doing those really special events like the dinner and the regular dinners and connecting with them. I started to think I should be doing more. There's more philosophy, there's more life lessons, there's more things I should be doing, could be doing. And again, self-judgment, self-criticism. And I finally just let myself off the hook to a certain extent, in that my kids are seeing how I'm being. They see how I am with my wife, their mom. They see how I am with my parents, their grandparents. They see how I am with strangers. They're like, Dad, why do you have to talk to everyone?
I get the same.
They're like, I'm like, let's go down to the store. It's only going to take us 10 minutes. They're like, Dad, no, with you, it takes an hour. There's no 10-minute walk. So anyway, and I just focus on who I'm being, right? And I'm confident and comfortable in who I am and who I'm being. And they get that. And as a result, they're sensitive, they're generous, they're loving, they're caring. They're great kids. So fortunate.
Yes.
Very fortunate. And it was just, Jamie, he called me and he's like, hey, listen, why don't we have a mastermind group, and, we can kind of support each other and go through some stuff. And it was really, it was a really magical experience, not just to be in Jamie's energy, because he's amazing and he's brilliant and he's so loving and so generous. It went in a completely different direction that I thought. And so the initial part of me is like, well, wait a second, this isn't kind of what I quote unquote signed up for. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to trust. I do trust Jamie, and I'm just going to not try to control where this goes. And it was such a beautiful exchange, and came up with a podcast idea that I've been threatening to do a podcast, for a while. And, it was always From Fear to Ferrari was was the name of it, my working title. And then after Jamie, I was like, the resort, love your resort, being a resort coach, So anyway, not to get into details about that, we can maybe chat about that another time, but he just opened my eyes to a lot of different things. The podcast was one, and just being in his energy, connecting with friends, and just in challenging each other in such a positive way. And when he then suggested this and came up with the theme, I didn't think of doing an interview or a podcast about career reinvention. And then he's like, oh, I'd like to invite Pascal. So of course, for me, I'm like, it's going to be amazing. Pascal, I feel like we're already best friends. It's like,
it's great. We're not even connected on LinkedIn. It is crazy.
So that was my long way.
This is an online speed dating like I've never seen.
I'm a huge fan of Jamie, and
yes,
and I love Jamie, and it was like instant love with Pascal. I know Jamie's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be recording this, but anyway, But Pascal, instantly, it was just this like connection. I can just tell. Like,
Same
I
here.
mean, I would do anything for you as I would for Jamie, because I can feel like all that love and compassion, and like if there's anything, and I'm saying it openly, but I would love to be specific. I get to know you.
I
Like,
feel the
could I?
same thing. I mean, this bright energy that comes, and yes, one feels at ease right away, like very natural, like literally. Yeah, like I said before, like we've known for a long time, like at
And
least
Jamie,
an
this
hour.
is huge. Like bringing this together. It's like as soon as you
We're-
said you guys have similar energy, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I love my energy. No, I didn't think that. I just went like, oh, this is this is great, right? It's going to be great to be in his energy and
yeah,
your
no.
energy at the same
James
time.
is not only reading handwriting, definitely he can see
No,
beyond.
Thank
I
you.
love it. I hope there's some real nuggets in our conversation that help people. Like honestly, and the one thing I always say, if I'm sharing advice, I try not to give people unsolicited advice. People don't necessarily, want to hear it. But if I feel if someone's asking for it, they're asking for support. And I always say, like, hey, I've got a few ideas for you. Like, and I just invite. I love to invite. I love the energy in that, because when you start to say like you should, already the listening for me, I mean, I kind of go from this to, I'm not necessarily listening as much, but I still listen, because again, that may just be their way of expressing it, and not to try to micromanage the way they're doing it. And anyway, I like to invite people to like try it on, like try this idea on, and maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, then throw it, because I've got some other ideas. And if it does, yeah, try it on and see if it resonates, see if it makes a difference. And
You know what, Greg? What you're saying gives me like a crazy idea. I don't know what Jamie's going to say, but why not, like, when posting this or promoting it, telling people that if they have questions, whatever, they can ask them. And I don't know if you're in, I'd be happy to come back and literally like pick the questions and then have a conversation like we had today
I'd love that.
to answer some of those topics. And if people asked, then we could do it more regularly. I'd be in. Because
I'm in.
of this chemistry and also our complementary skill sets, I believe. So yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you right now, any idea that Jamie or you or both of you come up with, I'm in. I'm all in. Like literally, you're like, Greg, what do you think of this? I'm like, if it's spending more time with either one of you or both of you, I am in. So
Same here.
Well, now that you say that, January 15th, I'm going skinny dipping in in Lake Ontario in the frozen water. So I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God. Okay.
I just wanted to push to see how far you go.
Yeah. I was like, that definitely. I'll tell you real quickly. I did a cold plunge.
Cold plunge.
And it wasn't super cold, but I had went out into the lake, and it was with someone who just explained the process, and I joked, because it was all these retreat leaders, so it was a little retreat for retreat leaders, and it was me and the rest of them were women, and then this guy came over to take us through a cold plunge, and I said to all the women, there were two women doing it, and me and this other guy, and all the other women, as I was passing, and I said jokingly, because I like to joke. I said, hey, if you hear anyone crying, that's definitely not me. So I go down there, and he tells us about the breath, and like, guys, there's no right way or wrong way. You go in up to your ankles, that's fine. You go up to your knees, you go up to your neck. He said, to get the full benefits, you want to go up to your neck. But he said, you don't have to, like, again. So he's completely made everything easy and accessible. And then as I got out into the water, and I'm just like dealing with the fear. And then I went and I got down to my neck. I burst out into tears. I started bawling. Like it just came out. I realized, oh my God, I've been holding all this fear, and doing the cold plunge scared the hell out of me. I don't know why, but it's not comfortable, right? It's just, there's nothing about it except by all the positive stuff that, of course, I knew. But anyway.
I do a cold shower every morning, like the Wim Hof thing. Does that count?
That counts. 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God.
And now I love it. I mean, at the beginning it hurt, then it became uncomfortable, and now I'm looking forward to it.
Oh
wow. I've never gotten that. I mean, 20, 30 seconds is my max. So that is respect.
And I've never looked forward to it.
Yeah, somehow you get used to it at some stage, and then I like almost like I would like an intense, like I'm saying, I'm gonna reset my autonomic nervous system, and then bang, I go cold.
Well, okay, I'm inspired now on a certain level. I'm going to go back. Man. All right. Well, look, what a pleasure this has been.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'd be open to however this evolves. Yeah. And Pascal, it'd be great too to connect with you. And
on that note, my co-host today, Pascal Wiscour-Conter and Greg de Koker. I was hoping that this conversation would be as inspiring and really practical about what it means to be in middle age, looking back at your life, like we've talked about as one of our main themes in this discussion, about you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And I thought the two of you offered a profound perspective on that question. Thank you both.
Jamie, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this and for having me meet Greg. Greg, it's so nice to meet you. It was a wonderful exchange.
Jamie, so great to be here.
And this is the Signature Leadership Show. Please subscribe if you haven't had a chance, because it allows us to get the message out on conversations like this to more leaders.